Welcome to Foundational You with Dr. Dean Hackett, the home of biblical teaching and cultural impact. We are so glad that you joined us for today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Dean, read his blog, and find more episodes at fdeanhackett.com. Now for today's episode.
Welcome to Foundational You. I'm Dr. Dean. We've been talking about the second coming of Jesus Christ, looking at the cluster of events that Jesus Christ said would signal to us that his second coming is getting very, very near. Jesus said, when you see all these things happening, then know that it is near, even at the door. We talked about how that first cluster of wars and rumors of wars and nations rising against nations and famines and pestilence and the such like, those were the birth pangs that they would get stronger, closer together, and give birth to the next cluster of events he talked about, which was a geopolitical, sociological, and spiritual. And those events, Jesus said, then is the last days. And then he gave that one signal that would let us know, boy, it is right upon us, and that is the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel. He said, when you see that standing in the holy place, then's going to come great tribulation like the world has never seen. And that is a whole reference in the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 9, verses 24 to 27, is all about the 70 weeks that leads up to the rise of global governance upon the earth. That the first, and we said that those 70 weeks were 70 weeks, each week being 7 years, so it was 70 times 7. And that the first 49 years, the first 7 weeks, that was leading up to the rebuilding of Jerusalem, the rebuilding and dedication of the second temple. And that from the time of that and then 62 more weeks, that led from the dedication of the second temple to the death, burial, and resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ. But there's that 70th week, that last 7 years that has not yet happened upon the earth. And we said that was going to be the 7 years of one world government, global government. It's easy to look at the beginning sorrows and see those events happening. It's pretty easy today to look and see how those things that are leading up to the last days, that we are so close to the end because of the geopolitical and sociological and spiritual things that are going on the earth that is just pointing to that. We can see how that the love of many is dying when we look at the breakdown of the human relationships and the amount of violence and crime going on around the world, and their hatred of Christianity, how that is growing. So all of that, I mean, it's easy to see that. But what about this last one? What about that rise of the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel? How close are we to seeing that happen? How close are we to global governance? Well, let me just point one thing as we go into this. For the first time in all of human history, one entity shut down the entire world. 2020, C-19, the World Health Organization. The authority and power that the WHO had over the nations of the world, not a nation, all the nations of the world, just suddenly under that power and that authority for the first time in all of human history. That's pretty staggering. But we have to be honest and say that global governance didn't just rise in our generation. It's been around for a couple of centuries. Actually, it goes all the way back to Nimrod, doesn't it? They were all of one language. and built the Tower of Babel. And so it has been a Luciferian desire from time memorial, where Lucifer wanting to control the whole world under the power and authority of his kingdom. And he's not been able to do that. He has used world empires to try and gain there. When you think about Egypt, and you think about the Assyrian Empire, which, by the way, modern day ISIS is wanting to be that Assyrian Empire again. You think about the Babylonian Empire, the Medes and Persians, Greece, Alexander the Great, Rome. You think about Nazi Germany and Hitler. We're gonna rule the world, and it's going to be for 1,000 years. And you just think about down through history how Lucifer has tried, but he's not gotten there. But we had something happen about 250 years ago that really began leading towards that. And in Bavaria, a handful of men formed what was called the Illuminati, and the goal to work towards what, and they were working covert to work towards a global governance, but it was very covert. In fact, they had to go underground to really continue working towards that. But at the end of World War I, the first really overt effort to try and form a global governance happened with the League of Nations at the end of World War I. But it really didn't work, and it failed. But at the end of World War II, FDR and other world leaders formed the United Nations. And though World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, it didn't. World War II, they're hoping that by the forming of the UN, instead of having world wars, instead of having nations rising against nations and kingdoms against kingdoms, we're going to have the UN that will be the peacemaker and will be that entity that will help control that and stop that in the world. And so the UN was formed. And of course, out of the UN, you had the European Common Market, you had the World Trade Organization, you had the World Banking Organization, and then the World Health Organization. All of those entities under the UN, and but as the second millennium came, as the year 2000 arose, the United Nations formed what was called the Earth Charter. And that was a fresh commitment to global governance and establishing some new entities that would work towards the accomplishing of that global governance. The UN Millennial Project that began establishing what were called strategic developmental goals, and they broke the entire globe down into 10 regions. And in those 10 regions, they would have their own prime minister, their own parliament, their own economical development. They and even their own police force or army, and that was their goal with that. Well, the first one that accomplished that, of course, was the European Union. The European Common Market became the European Union. And then NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Association, which united Canada, the United States, and Mexico together. And what many people are not aware of is from about 2003 until about 2010, something like that, they held mock parliaments every year. They would hold these mock parliaments where they would elect a prime minister, and then they actually formed a trade court that would deal with injustice inside commercial in ventures. They formed the triumvirate, which was another step towards uniting these three nations together. And they developed trade corridors that went all the way from southern Mexico and the ports in southern Mexico, all the way up through Mexico, through the United States, all the way up into Canada. These free trade routes where there would be no passports necessary. There would be free travel through the borders. All of that uniting the world. Of course, CAFTA was then formed also. These 10 regions of the world was their next step. The Millennial Project became very significant in moving towards global governance. What I'm wanting you to see is that global governance is not futuristic. Although it's been working at it for over 250 years, we are at a time where global governance is not just someone's imagination, and it's not some sort of conspiracy theory. It is becoming a reality. The next big step that moved towards that was the World Economic Forum. Well, let me share with you a text from a video that the World Economic Forum put out in 2021. The title of the video was 8 Predictions for the World in 2030. Now think about this, okay? That's just 6 short years and 8 months from right now, 2030. Here's some quotes from that video. In fact, I'm going to share with you the entire text of that video. It's only 1 minute and 34 seconds long. You can watch it on YouTube yourself. 8 predictions for the world in 2030. Quote, and all the rest of these now are quotes. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Whatever you want, you will rent, and it will be delivered by drone. The U.S. won't be the world's leading superpower. A handful of countries will dominate. You won't die waiting for an organ donor. We won't transplant organs. We will print new ones instead. You will eat much less meat, an occasional treat, not a staple, for the good of the environment and our health. 1 billion people will be displaced by climate change. We'll have to do a better job at welcoming and integrating refugees. Polluters will have to pay to emit carbon dioxide. There will be a global price on carbon. This will help make fossil fuels history. You could be preparing to go to Mars. Scientists will have worked out how to keep you healthy in space. The start of a journey to find alien life? Western values will have been tested to the breaking point. Checks and balances that underpin our democracies must not be forgotten. Wow. Did you notice the level of control they're talking about by 2030? No private ownership. They control what you eat. Western values under attack to the breaking point. Sounds like communism, doesn't it? Well, indeed, as we continue on, you're going to see exactly how much power and control they're talking about. So, who is the World Economic Forum? And how was it formed? How did it come into existence? What's its place right now? Well, there is a man named Klaus Schwab, who was a professor of business at the University of Geneva. He founded the European Management Forum in 1971. And the point of the forum was he would bring a group of European business CEOs, managers, supervisors. He would bring them together in Davos, and they would study and hear presentations on how to improve their management so that the European business and market management would reach and be equal or even advance the United States of America. And in 1973, the world events that were taking place in 1973, and there was kind of an economic crisis that not only hit the U.S. but around the world at that time. That moved everything from just being management to looking more at economic and social issues. And so in January of 1974, he didn't just invite managers, supervisors, business owners into Davos, but he began inviting political leaders into Davos and began working more on economic issues and also on social issues. Well, by 1976, then he began forming membership in the European Management Forum. The 1,000 business leaders became members of the European Management Forum in 1976. But by the late 1980s, the annual meeting at Davos began to have a greater magnitude upon its influence and power in not just the business community, but now it was beginning to have a significant influence upon social issues and upon the political issues. And then in 1987, it became the World Economic Forum. So the European Management Forum became the World Economic Forum in 1987. That influence from the late 1980s continued to grow and in significant proportions in the 90s and at the turn of the new millennium. And in 2015, it became recognized as a global platform influencing the business community, world economics, and world social issues. In 2019, a significant turn happened. On June 13th, 2019, the World Economic Forum merged with the United Nations and became a new arm of the United Nations. And they committed themselves, the World Economic Forum committed themselves to helping the UN fulfill and reach 6 of the strategic developmental goals that the UN has set. Those 6 goals were financing and to reach the 2030 agenda for financing around the world, which, by the way, includes a new digital currency. Climate change, their influence in climate change, in health. Now that's going to become very important in just a moment when we're talking about health management, health issues, and then digital cooperation. Developing, and they have developed a whole new platform from which the entire world, banking and commerce, not just banking, but banking and commerce, they have a whole new platform that is uniting all of that around the globe. Gender equality and empowerment of women. So their whole commitment to the LGBTQ plus and gender equality for women, and then education and skills. Those are the 6 areas that the World Economic Forum has said to the UN, we're going to help you reach these goals by 2030. Now, think about that and think about the video that they released in 2021. So let me share with you a preamble taken from the World Economic Forum developed another forum within it. So inside the World Economic Forum is this global governance forum that has been developed. And the whole objective of the Global Governance Forum is stated in the preamble on their own website. This is from Global Governance Forum .org /about. Quote, "We are here to promote global governance to achieve unprecedented measures of prosperity, health, education, peace, and justice. We the peoples, as the UN Charter preamble calls us, have a profound need for effective and credible mechanisms of international cooperation that will serve the current future interests of humanity as a whole and safeguard the planetary systems on which we rely. While interdependence has created tensions between traditional conceptions of national sovereignty and the idea of collective problem solving, the Global Governance Forum believes that joint, coordinated action based on carefully defined and legitimate common goals can restore the rapidity diminishing efficacy of current global governance mechanisms. The current mechanisms trying to reach global governance isn't working. We're developing new ones. That's what they're saying. Now, continuing on, quote, "Given the reality of globalization and current global risks, it is our belief that the national autonomy of states is best served by strengthening the international rule of law, collective security, and collaborative environmental management," unquote. Did you catch what they just said? That it's going to be best for every nation if every nation's constitution becomes subservient to an international rule of law. And if every nation's police force and army becomes under the united, a global police force and army. And if all of us are committed 100% to this whole new environmental management. The goals and objectives of the World Economic Forum is significant when we look at what Jesus said about the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel. In our next podcast, we're going to take this to the next level and see how closely the World Economic Forum and the UN fits to the fulfilling of that prophecy by Daniel and reiterated by the Lord Jesus Christ himself. God bless you. Thank you for joining me in this podcast today. I hope that you will subscribe and click like and encourage your friends and family to do likewise. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today. This Christ-centered biblical training is a ministry of Spirit Life Ministries. We hope that you are blessed by this podcast and share it with your friends and colleagues. For more information or questions for Dr. Dean, please contact us at the website fdeanhackett.com.